going to say just a few words, and this is, and then I'll turn the CBEC Forum over to Fareed Saab. So ये CBEC Forum तो हमारा होता रहता है, and the topics are often very different. आज जो है, I'm really delighted and I'm honored that Ms. Durriya Kazi has agreed to come and hold this forum for us. I've known her for a very long time. Formal introduction कर देंगे, लेकिन I think, I presume that pretty much most of you, except for we have a few high school students, उन्होंने शायद Ms. Durriya Kazi की बात नाम ना सुना हो, लेकिन बाकी तो आप लोग I'm sure जानते हैं. And it really is a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming. And Fareed Saab, a formal introduction कर दें.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Ms. Durriya Kazi. जो लोग नहीं जानते उनके लिए थोड़ा सा एक बेसिक इंट्रोडक्शन और मैं ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लूँगा. Ms. Durriya Kazi is an artist based in Karachi, and she founded the Department of Visual Arts at University of Karachi, and she remained the head of the department from 1998 to 21, and she's famous for her art exhibitions, curations all over the world, and it's been more than 40 years around the world. And she also writes for Dawn fortnightly, and her writings are on various themes, including arts, urban spaces, history, even intersection of politics and our heritage, all these things. And today this forum is based on a presentation, a curation. मिस काजी साहिबा इनकी एक क्यूरेशन थी डेंसो हॉल में एक एग्जीबिशन के लिए, और कराची के कुछ खास मोमेंट्स, कुछ इवेंट्स, कुछ यादगारें जो इन्होंने क्यूरेट की थी उस एग्जीबिशन के लिए, उसको लेके थोड़ा सा हमारे एक फोरम के अंदर सीबैक के लिए प्रेजेंट करेंगी. सो बहुत शुक्रिया.
So, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and it's an honor to be here. The honor is mine rather than anyone else's. Firstly, I'd like to just make clear that I'm not a historian. I'm not, a scholar in that sense. I'm just a very curious person. And I think of this whole thing is like being a bit of a magpie and just collecting things. I was asked to do this, put together photographs for an exhibition that Yasmin Lari was arranging. And I thought, just putting photographs together was not enough. How do I make it my own? So I focused on just a smattering of images and stories that I call the forgotten stories of Karachi. So it's not really, excuse me, it's not really intended as a history of Karachi, but at the same time, obviously it is, from my perspective. I am going to show slides. Maybe some of you have already seen this. I just added a couple of more slides to the beginning. But rather than my just giving a lecture, we are all, I think, it's a shared love of the city. It's a shared sharing of information. So please feel free to step in, add to it. My knowledge is limited. Somebody else might have some other aspects of it, and they're different age groups. So everybody has some connection with this city. Those of us older ones remember it, remember a very different Karachi from what my children remember it as. So we'll begin. And this way? This one, okay. So, So if we start with something that we never imagined. We never imagined Karachi as being a prehistoric city. We think of, oh, that's a good idea. So, I was quite surprised, firstly, before I go any further, I have to say that the people I have to acknowledge for my absolute passion to find out more about Karachi of which Sarif is Arif Hassan, because Arif Hassan actually introduced me in many ways to the not just the buildings, but the life and living and whatever happened in between the buildings. So I was very surprised to discover, which people like Kaluro Saab and Kalmati Saab have been discovering, that we have stone circles and what they call megaliths or dolmens, not far from Karachi. If you see that small inset, it's just north of, it's within Karachi's boundaries. And you can see that building, that image bottom right, that has, those ones at top belong to the 7 or 8 sites where there are these stone circles. Nobody knows what they are. The developers have not reached there yet, so it will be a very short time that they will be there. Yeah. I knew about, from the university, I knew about, Mulberry Hills, which is literally just across from Karachi University. And Dr. Javed said he was so upset. He says कि हमने बड़ी कोशिश की, but कि उसके ऊपर high rise नहीं बने. And in many countries, I know that they leave a basement where it's on a heritage ground. So basement छोड़ देते हैं so that it still has those relics and you feel the history, and yet development can happen. But we generally don't care. I mean, coming down Bandar Road today and this whole area, बीच में इतनी खूबसूरत नायाब किस्म की buildings हैं. And unfortunately, जो नई चीज बनती है वो कोशिश भी नहीं करती कि वो खूबसूरत बने. So that is always a big issue. So I think, Flintstones and not the cartoon, but actual Flintstones. And, it's just very interesting to know. I remember, I don't know, aap log may say how many people have been to Seven Sharif, but in Seven Sharif for years, we used to see this little hillock. Then some years ago, the Australians said, some team of archaeologists, they said it doesn't fit with the topography of the place. उन्होंने जब उसमें खोदना शुरू किया, they discovered that there was an Alexander's fort over there. And so who knows what else lies over here? Because a very important aspect of archaeology we don't do over here, we'll talk about that perhaps later, is marine archaeology. And now they have all these amazing new technologies that can, without actually harming the soil, they can actually see it. So it's not going. Okay. It's also got a lot of ancient temples. Now, that's something which takes back its history much further. We will come to the modern city at 1729. But again, this is something Arif Hassan pointed out, which I then explored. Yeah, obviously, it was a pilgrimage site of some manner. So although you have a lot of documentation from old maps and Alexander's time and so on. But a lot of these, for example, 2 mandirs in particular, there are about 35 different mandirs and gurdwaras in Karachi. And the Hanuman Mandir, where in fact recently they discovered these, when there was some work going on, they discovered these other murtis that were buried it's under their custodianship, but it got a bit lost in the process. So 1500 years ago, and I've gone and seen the murtis. They really look like उसपे पता नहीं सालों से लोगों ने पूजा की होगी, so the forms have become very softened. The Mahadev temple is very interesting. Of course, many stories. I don't know which is the right one. One story I read said this is where Lord Shiva came to earth from here, and it is from here that he will return. Others say he lived here for a while, and Guru Nanak also contemplated. Now they've unfortunately made it all very modern in the Clifton Wala. This is a Kuthari, and they've really expanded it quite a lot. The first one is in Soldier Bazaar, not far from here. And of course, on Bandar Road also, there's a very big, very active group of temples. So this place you could see was where the caves are, which have now all been modernized, and there's tiles and everything, but it looks like they're water worn. So I presume the water level was that much higher. Uska moja kya tha is another story. It's all just questions, not enough answers. At the same time, we have also a lot of mazars and shrines over here. I think 100 से ऊपर होंगे, मगर officially शायद उससे कम 35-40 ऐसे होंगे, and they're all over, dotted all over the city. And Abdullah Ghazi shows that it was, 8th century. His story, I'm sure all of you know. It's a very interesting story how he was, his father went against the Abbasi Khalifa. The son comes over here as a horse trader, so they say. Again, please correct me. Someone else might have a better story, a more accurate one. And he stayed over here, got involved with the local activities and obviously trying to spread Islam and so on. His brother was also here, Yusuf Shah, I think. And at the same time, they didn't leave him alone. So the next Khalifa, who was, I think, Mavia, if I'm not wrong, he wanted to. Have I done that? Or did you do this? Okay. So, then for a while along the coast, when he had to, the governor was asked, arrest the man. The governor didn't want to because and he's supposed to be from the family of Imam Ali, and so, very respected people around him. So the idea that there was some kingdom with a Raja along the coast that protected him and kept him, safe for a while. Then eventually, of course, and his wife and daughter also here, eventually he gets caught, he gets killed, and he's brought here for burial. This was, which I'll show you at the end, a very barren part of the coastline. But there's some story again, because there's a freshwater spring, which is considered a moja. So he was told after he died, his people who were with him, they were dying of thirst, they didn't know where to get water from, and he gets a dream, and they say ki yahan pe khodo, yahan se pani niklega. So there are all these wonderful stories. Even Mangopir maybe a spring hai, hot water spring. So it's very interesting. And of course, I mentioned Mangopir also, who was 13th century. A lot of the Sufis came from somewhere else. But there is also one who came from Larkana, female Sufi. So Miran Mai. So I think, बहुत interesting ये माहौल होगा. People talk of Multan as being the city of saints, but Karachi doesn't seem that far behind. If anyone has anything to correct or add, please do. So we jump now and to 1729. How do we know about 1729? From the book of Naumal Hojan, who said that his grandfather, Hojomal, had a Kadak Bandar, which I don't know where the remnants of it are, but it was supposed to be along Hub River. That was the main trading point. And these traders, they traded all over. They went to the Middle East and other parts of India and Persia. And then at some point there was heavy rain or something, and the river got silted, and they had to find another place. So they then discovered Karachi. I've never understood why Karachi was not a big port before then, because it's got a natural harbor. So how come people didn't turn it into a port earlier? Maybe they did, and we don't know, because most talk is about Deval and Bambur and Lari Bandar and, along the delta. So these people came. Sorry, you were saying something?
I was just saying that in those days when people were not very adept at sailing, they used to stick to the coast as they sailed. They very rarely went across the seas or anywhere. And in the same way, it was easier to have a port on a delta branch or on a small river, because then you didn't have to worry about tides, or you didn't have to you did, I mean, tides did matter, but in the open sea it was a much more dangerous situation could occur, while in smaller side branches it was just safer. And
I
that's
think
why
that
everywhere.
that could be one point, but I think the point you were making earlier, that it was linked to the river because the trade would come along the river. Just as an aside, there's also supposed to be an emporium, as they call them, called Barbaricon, which they don't know exactly where it is, somewhere near Karachi. And it was a big trade route as well. I was under the impression that when the Parthians and Romans were fighting and the Silk Route could not go straight across, that for several years it came down here. But I think they say no, it was an independent route. So a man called Hippolus, I don't know how you pronounce his name, Greek, and he discovered the monsoon, that the ships can come with the monsoon, and in winter the wind reverses. So I imagine there must be so many interesting things. And as you all know, there's a big fort in the Delta as well, which is partly being excavated. So, Alexander was supposed to have gone back via Las Vegas. He made ships from all the trees, and his soldiers, when they refused to go further, they came down here and went. So this place must have seen a lot of very interesting events. So Ho Chun's, grandfather and the traders, they moved over here. When the British came, the population was about 1,400. They lived in a mud fortress. In 1925, already people of the original Leari community, they say they were nomads. They had already settled in parts of this area, and we don't know too much about that or too much about who else was there. But we do know that they built a fasil, uske upar shayad tope bhi lagi thi, and they lived inside when the British came. The British, why did they come over here? That's a whole other story, because already they had come from Calcutta and moved further and further and further in. The theory was that this was a way of controlling Russia and the West, and they didn't have that much in this part, and they wanted to. That's one theory. Karachi itself was very attractive because it cut down the distance to the Middle East, to the Persian Gulf, to all those states. So there are beautiful stories about the actual attack, and that there was this man and a woman and a child who were manning the fort at Manora, and I've heard that it wasn't so easy for the British to even get off their ships at that time, because there was a lot of, I think, resistance to the idea. Because Karachi, if you look again at the history of all the people, I've got this very beautiful, I don't know if you'll have time, a very beautiful small video about all the people that passed into this part of town, the Akhmenids, the Mongols, the White Huns, Buddhism was right down to here. We all forget that. We forget how many the Argons were Turco-Bactrian people, the Scythians, right up to Karachi. So that means, but then उन्होंने genetic footprint छोड़ा होगा कि नहीं, but certainly they must have added to everything. And then, of course, Muhammad bin Qasim brought the Arab thing. The Shidis are supposed to have come from Tanzania. Some people say they're Bantu people. Again, I can't get too much. It's very difficult. It depends on what books you read. If you read Angrezon ki kitab, to uski kahani kuch aur hoti hai. If you read something that is written by local people like Shah Latif or then the story is something else. If you just do anecdotal stories of people where you interview them, then it's yet another story. So I think one needs to really have a dedicated team writing the history of Karachi. So, G.
Salman, but then my understanding is a Muslim tribe
Throughout, I think from Hazrat Umar's time onwards. Actually, the Baloch were the real fighters, you know, because I think they rebelled a lot, and even much later, even people like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but even people like the Talpurs and all, in their actual army, Baloch were engaged as fighters. So they found it very difficult. But remember that even before Islam, there were Arab traders, but they went along the west coast of India. I don't think they came here. Magar kuch na kuch connections to honge, you know, people must have known about each other, and you're buying and selling, so you get to know kahan se aaya hai, kaun aaya.
I guess the important thing is हम लोग कहते हैं कि inside really you only trace our history back to the Muslims.
Oh, we don't. No, we don't. I think it is our official. official.
So the whole point is the picture said what you are describing.
Yeah, it's you know, because the Mughals also didn't make this into a big. They made the mosque was in Thatta, and Lahore is considered to be the Mughal capital. So somehow Karachi nazarandaz ho gaya. Abhi bhi nazarandaz hota rehta hai. It seems to be in our you know, in our qismat. But I think this idea of this, you know, this gentleman, Admiral Frederick Maitland, he was the one who took Napoleon to Mount Helena, and you know, and Kipade. So the idea of this is in fact the Wellesley ship that he came on, which was made in Bombay. And he came and he just marched in. 2-3 तोपों से उन्होंने वो जो fort है at Manora उसको उड़ा दिया, and they came in. But it was properly annexed in 1843 by Charles Napier, Sir Charles Napier, who I find a fascinating person. The British government actually did not like him. And he did not like the British government because he was this Sarpira. He was 61 at this time, and he had this amazing vision for Karachi. He really, really believed Karachi was everything. In fact, if we I'll just stay here a minute. So he actually had huge faith. Now, Yavar Jilani, the architect, pointed this out to me. He said, you realize Karachi is the only city in the empire that was totally made by the British, because you cannot count a small mud fortress with a few, you know, houses over there. The whole layout of the city, turning it into a modern city. So it's like the sort of Dubai, you know, where Registan made this fantastic, and that's why you see such a variety of architecture. A lot of the architects, apart from the big names of architects, are also like Freyhol ka jo architect tha, Wilkins, Major Wilkins, you know, like they were Fauji's who became architects. What kind of people were there that could make such a complicated design? The work we always forget, they may have designed it. They didn't always fund it. A lot of local people also funded it. But I don't know, again, please, someone teach me how to say it correctly. Magar jo Salvat bolte hain, the workers, the Marwari workers. Silawat. So they were the real Mahir who made these buildings. And, you know, recently there's been a lot of discussion about how their graves have a small version of the building that they worked on. So it's again this combination of things. And so it's Charles Napier is the one who had the dream for Karachi. He didn't fulfill all of it, but he knew कि पानी बनना चाहिए, port को properly gehra banana chahiye, that the Napier mold should be made connecting the city, that we needed to use maybe Damloti or the canals, that the canals had to be dredged and fixed. And he really believed Karachi was going to be it. And yes. Well, and but most of the work was then done by Bartle Frere, you know, because he was here a long time. Napier ka a lot of people usko lagta tha bahut khushk mizaj hain, and he was quite a harsh critic of everything. Whereas Bartle Frere was supposed to be this sweet, friendly guy. Although we have to also remember it was during his time, 1857 happened, and he was the one who authorized topon se जो हमारा Empress Market पे लोगों को उड़ा देना. So he had his Angrez side as well. And there begins the transformation of Karachi. It's very difficult to imagine. You can see Frehol on that side. And, you know, I don't know, इनकी हिम्मत कैसे हुई? How did they live? एक दरख्त नहीं, पानी के लिए कुएं खोदने पड़े. And they're huge spaces. I don't know if any of these still exist. But it's very interesting. If you're standing here, they say it might have been taken from Trinity Church. I'm not sure where the height is from, but it's vast. And very soon, we get this. So you have all these amazing, beautifully built, I mean, even जो यहाँ पे पुरानी building के खंडर हैं, they are still surviving. And the houses that we built with our new technology, they collapse. Like on Bandar Road, you know, where Bambino Cinema joins Bandar Road, there's the cafe.
Cafe Daraksha.
Pelvi. Uske sirf kinare khade hain. Even I think Liberty Chowk, maybe, I mean, where is it called? Lucky Star ke paas. That they're still standing, right? They have no other structure, but it means they were so beautifully built. And I remember going around, we went around to all the Hindu temples, and this architect was with us, and he was pointing out the architectural language of each one. And it's not, you know, something happened. So I think the fact, like initially they're saying kerosene street lamps, but right in the beginning they used nariyal ka tel to light up areas. And you know, the way the roads may obviously tarmac purani laga tha. The very first road that was built in Karachi, according to Bashir Sadusai, I don't know if any of you have read his book. He's done an amazing history of KMC from 1844 to 1970 something, and then there's going to be a second version also. So the very first street was in fact our Napier Street in 1844. The next time was the next street was Bandar Road, which was made to connect. And then aisa aisa, city itself was, because logon ke upar itna logon ka trust nahi tha. So the natives were at one end, the cantonments were the other end, and they put all their training army stuff in the middle. Artillery Maidan, Napier Barracks, all that was like saying hum hain, you know, just don't try and act up. So there was this whole psychological drama. And there's this very beautiful, you know, Ajmal had started this series, and the Karachi Ki Kahani. And Damvi Saab has also written. But jo Karachi Ki Kahani mein, unka kya naam hai? It'll just come to me. I'm sorry, names keep vanishing. But 1917 ka ek account hai, where this person who's very well known come to me. And he is saying how on Elphinstone Street, only British own the shops over there and one Parsi. And if you were invited to sit in front of Haydn, you know, where that Bliss Balijo thing, which unfortunately is in Masita soul. But wahan pe, if you sat there on those easy chairs, so it means ke aapki bahut badi izzat हुई कि अंग्रेजों ने आपको वहां बैठने की इनविटेशन की. तो उस वक्त ये भी बहुत होता था. Hochand himself, we all revere that he's written this story, but he was a survivalist and he constantly worked with the British. Bartlett Frere loved him. He was in all the first municipalities and everything. और ये मुखबिरी बहुत करते थे कि ये हो रहा, including 1857, and I'll send my people here and they'll get information. So, there's all this also happening, trying to adjust and survive and live with this. And Napier, in fact, invited people from all over India to come and become businessmen, which were Maimans and Khojas and Gujarati people, and कि यहाँ और यहाँ के करो. In fact, it's very interesting. Dalrymple की जो किताब है Last Mughal, I'm trying to find that route somewhere, who says that during the Ghadar, 1857, members of Bahadur Shah, a group of Bahadur Shah family was sent to Karachi. Why were they sent? 1857 में यहाँ क्या होगा, कहाँ है वो लोग, उनका शजरा कहाँ से मिलता है? That's also something I'm very, so if anyone knows of any Mughal princess, please let me know. So this was Napier's dream. He called it the Star of the East. He thought it was the center of everything. And you can see from these two maps that this is how he visualized Karachi would be. And somehow they're very beautiful, especially this one. It's got this lovely feeling about it. Milestones भी उस जमाने में बहुत होते थे. हमने तो अपने बचपन में देखे. I haven't seen any now. There might be in some parts of Karachi, but this was something that the Romans actually started. And then during Sher Shah's time also, there was something called the Kos Minar. Kos meaning a mile or a distance. तो वो भी जगह क्योंकि उन्होंने Grand Trunk Road बनाया था. So this idea of no GPS, no nothing, so you knew where you were. मगर it isn't just कि यहाँ से गुलशन इतने मील दूर है, but it is यहाँ से वो मुल्क, वो शहर, वो दूर दराज, so that you knew this idea of being connected to the world and being part of it. Because if you look at our prehistory, during the time of even the Indus civilization, we were trading all over the place. So there was this internationalism that was already there. We also had the first telegraphic connection to India. So Karachi, for the British, Karachi was also the first point for the first Hawai Adda for this thing. And again, as an aside, I had gone with a friend to the fjords of Oman. And there's a point over there where one of the towers of these of the telegraph thing, वहाँ पे एक tower होता था on a small island that was maybe the size of this building maximum, with nothing, dry, arid. And for 6 months, a British soldier used to be asked to be there. फिर अगला आता था. So when you went round towards this island, they said he went round the bend. And we now use that term, round the bend, यानी पागल हो गया है, because 6 महीने बाद उनका हशर हो चुका होता है. But it's very interesting to see that. And the same thing happened with the Zeppelin that was supposed to come but never made it. People had this ambition. This, of course, is the Kala Chapra, which I never saw, but I think Faiza might have seen it. It's, I think, where there's that metro, शायद उसके पीछे, or that road you take to वो जो airport के side से जो जाता है, I think वहाँ right पे वहाँ भी शायद hangars ही हैं. So this Zeppelin never actually made it, but this place remained for a very long time. And you remember it?
Of course, I've seen
Very
it.
clearly. तो सुना है इसके अंदर soldiers
I've seen it.
खेलते थे, रहते थे. My great grandfather. Oh wow, that's so interesting. क्या नाम था उनका? Ibrahim? Hakim ji. So very interesting. Now you see, this story needs to be added to our history. So it's an ugly looking thing, but it was a historic place, It had its function, it was a functional building. And So 1960 or 62 mein, I think it was pulled down, which I understand they had to make room for it. We also First World War, Second World War, दोनों में यहाँ पे क्योंकि वो East का भी महाज था. In fact, my mother said when they were in Bhopal, वहाँ पे World War II का कैंप होता था. एक Italians का था, एक Germans का था. Italians had no interest in running away. They used to come and become gardeners in people's homes, and the Germans were always trying to run away. They didn't know anything about the politics. They were kids, so they said, "Oh, वहाँ जाके कहते थे Heil Hitler" at the boundary wall, and they used to get filthy looks from everyone, you know. So unko they had no idea. So we come to this strange personality. If Napier was quite, you know, eccentric, nobody could beat Richard Francis Burton. I think, you know, we're still finding, acha usne ye bhi kiya, acha usne ye bhi kiya. So he just seems to have had you can't even just call him a rebel. You can't, maybe he was an adventurer. He was certainly highly intelligent. He spoke so many languages. In the short time he was here, he had learned all the languages, Saraiki and Sindhi and everything he had learned. Then he was also interested in, you know, he learned all about the religions. So at some point he became a Hindu, at some point he became a Muslim, even had his circumcision done because he wanted to go to Hajj. And so he disguised himself as a, you know, religious person. And in his Quran, he carried a Quran with him. The Quran was actually a cover for his notebook and, you know, various things that he had. And कहीं पे वो पकड़े जाते थे, कहीं पे उनके लोग फिर, you know, डंडे बरसाते थे. And then he went to Africa. He wanted to find the Nile. He, you know, we all knew him as having translated that 1001 Nights. He also translated the Kama Sutra. He also, यानी हर चीज के पीछे उनका कुछ ना कुछ जहाँ पे जाओ लगता है वहाँ जाके it connects with Richard Burton. So I think he must have been a fascinating man. And he was sent to be the assistant to, or, you know, assigned to Charles Napier. And Napier, at that time, Hyderabad, you know, Napier was fixing Hyderabad, the Kakila, and making that into his center. But then he says, look, this place is cooler, yahan sham ki hawa aati hai. So then the capital was moved to Karachi. And so he must have been some personality. The other important person who passed through here was Lawrence.
Lawrence of
You know, Lawrence of Arabia. And you know, now where the Air Force Museum is, yahin par he would have been here for 2 years in these barracks. And he was another one who became a showman. He didn't intend to become a showman. I think he was dragged into it because he was held to be responsible by many for getting the Arab nationalists to turn against the Ottomans so that they could break the Ottoman Empire. So he promised everything to them, and he looked at the 3 sons and he decided, you know, of the Sharif, and decided Faisal was the one who was the most. And a lot of people feel he was angry with the British government, but actually he continued to work in the intelligence. And he became said he was an archaeologist. He met that other strange archaeologist, Catherine, whatever her name was, who made the boundaries of Iraq. So, and he, you know, loved wearing this. He spoke perfect Arabic. So he became this, and when he came back, and he was very upset about the Sykes-Picot agreement, because while all this was going on, कि हम अरबों को उनका independent मुल्क देंगे and so on, and turn against the dirty Turks. You know, that was their idea कि ये आपको नहीं करने देंगे. The French and the British were secretly saying Syria हमारा होगा, फलाना आपका होगा. They had no intention of making it independent. So he discovered this eventually, felt very betrayed, where the you know, that he's made all these promises, or maybe zaban kharab ho jayegi, etc. But he took it in his stride and continued to support whatever government policy there was. And at some point, they decided to do a kind of theater type of thing where they would show, they thought this was so glamorous. You know, now they think of the Arabs differently. But at that time, जो शायरी होती थी और जो लोग अरबों के बारे में सोचते थे कि सती हैं, काफिक्स हैं और घोड़े हैं, flowing robes हैं, there was a kind of romance. So the fact that he had lived with them and he continued to wear the headdress and so on. So कोई एक theater type चीज होती थी, and he had to pose for photographs all the time. And then the whole thing kind of caught up with him, and he felt, you know, this is not for me. So he tried to change his name. And he went to enlist in the Air Force. W.E. Johns, who wrote all the Biggles books, if anyone of my generation will have read them, he interviewed him and said, this is not your real name. So he was rejected. Then they agreed to send him to Miran and remotest part, you know, Karachi. कि 2 साल के लिए यहाँ, and he changed his name to T. Shaw.
Sorry. He changed it to Ross.
That was the first time.
Yeah. Use mic, please.
Yeah.
When he came to when he came to Drigg Road, PF Drigg Road, he came under the name of John Ross, right? बिल्कुल अलग से टी से, क्योंकि टी से तो वो इनिशियल वही हो जाता, उसके बाद फिर बदला ये तो नहीं पता.
नहीं, actually when he from what I've read, you know, again it depends on sources. When he applied for the Air Force, that was the name. Ross or
John Hume
Ross.
John Hume Ross, इस नाम से.
हाँ, फिर यहाँ पे अब कब बदला, that I don't know, but they say he picked up Shaw because of George Bernard Shaw, whom he admired. ये लिखते भी बहुत थे, बहुत, you know, and he was obviously must have been, and he looks very kind of ordinary over here with his shorts and his, you know, doesn't look like Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, ये अंग्रेज ने उसको identity, but because he was a very hot commodity, looked at by so many powers.
Good branding.
हाँ, नहीं पे टर्किश भी लोग ढूंढ रहे थे उसको. इस वजह से वो अंग्रेज ने उसकी आइडेंटिटी बदल के, जैसे अब करते हैं, अफगानी को ले गए वहां जाके दूसरा नाम दे दिया, इसको भी उन्होंने किया, आइडेंटिटी बदल के ड्रिग रोड एयरफोर्स में भर्ती करके ड्रिग रोड भेज दिया.
So you think that it was done by the British?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't go into the Air Force without there.
Yeah.
Very much there.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. It's same as with जो वो थे Gordon of Khartoum, वो भी कुछ ज्यादा native हो गए, तो उनको भी उन्होंने फिर
इसकी किताब भी है, 7 Pillars of Wisdom.
And then he was writing another book which never got published, The Mint or something, which was his life in the army. But 7 Pillars of Wisdom. I mean, these people were larger than life, you know? And I think difficult for the government to handle also, because he pulled it.
Made Lawrence of Arabia is probably one of the biggest epics, best epics ever made. And it's fairly accurate. And in a lot of ways, it's accurate.
I always thought Alec Guinness was so good as Faisal.
Yes, Faisal.
हमारे घर में बहुत उस वक्त ज़माने की तस्वीरें रखी हैं, and he has that look about him. Yeah.
Omar Sharif beat.
It was a very beautiful film. I feel that, and the other Omar Sharif film about the Russian Revolution, क्या नाम है? Dr. Zhivago. These in our work kind of imprinted in our minds. So a lot of postcards that this junkie is very interested, was called Johnny Stores. कि बहुत आपको online मिलेंगी postcards. Magar his name was actually Junkie Das, and he was known as Junkie by his friends, and it became Johnny. So he picked it up and he became Johnny Store's postcard. So you find a lot of lovely postcards from that period. This is also very interesting. This building is very much a jewel of Bandar Road. MHNR Road, I still find it difficult to मेरे मुंह से Bandar Road ही निकलता है. So it's very interesting to see this in process. Very handsome building, also by, you know, in fact, I read a whole article about the role of Scottish architects. There's an excessive number of Scottish architects. And that's how it was. Of course, अब तो नजर ही नहीं आता क्योंकि in fact there was, I think some art students were told to go and put, take photographs. तो जब वो वहाँ गए तो they saw a man cutting a beautiful जो पुराना बड़का दरख्त था. And they said, ये भाई क्यों काट रहे हो? He says, हमको order है, यहाँ पे हमें ये sign लगाना है. What did the sign say? अपने दरख्तों की हिफाजत करो. And they must have thought ये खूबसूरत दरख्त के सामने रखो. उसने कहा इसकी जगह में रखना है. So this huge tree was cut down to put. I so ironic, This, I can't find any reference to this. This image is obviously true, but whether the KMC, because at that time it had already become, the KMC had, it says KMC at the top, South African Europeans are not welcome to Karachi in view of the racial discrimination made in their country and the anti-Indian legislation passed by them. Now that's a very big statement to put up there. उस वक्त हमारे जो जितने city के mayors थे वो सब local थे. And there was a system कि वो एक मर्तबा मुस्लिम बनेगा, फिर पारसी बनेगा, फिर हिंदू बनेगा, एक मर्तबा Christian भी बना था, but that they would keep rotating and to represent everyone. And this is something which maybe later we can discuss, that this city, even now, if you look at the names of the streets, बहुत कम उन्होंने बदले हैं. इसके अंदर हिंदू भी हैं, इसके अंदर Jewish names भी हैं. There's even a David Solomon Road. There's अंग्रेजों के नाम. There's local Goanese के नाम. So it obviously was a very egalitarian society. So I tried to find out, was there actually a policy, but so far I have not found anything.
It's only referring to South Africans. The sign, South African Europeans. तो वहाँ European थे, the whites.
वहाँ थोड़ी लगाया था, यहाँ लगाया.
नहीं. It's referring only to the white skin of South Africa.
Yeah.
Right? Not other white skin.
No, no.
Only the Europeans of South Africa who were practicing apartheid.
Yes.
That they're not welcome.
Yeah.
Although it could have been better.
But when you
phrased.
think this is in the 40s and the rest of the world didn't catch up till the 80s, it's quite something that someone had it, and had it enough to put a sign up is a big statement. Agar aapki sirf quiet policy ho, it's something very different. So this is a very historic place, of course, Empress Market. Abhi to unhone isme sare wo tajawuzat hata diye hain. But the building is still obviously intact, and it was only Europeans are allowed to shop here. Yeah, and it's.
Please tell us about the canons of 1857.
It's just coming up.
You are.
So what happened was that I forget कौन सी battalion थी यहाँ पर at that time जब Ghadar जब शुरू हो गया था, मेरठ से शुरू हुआ, and it carried on to everywhere. And of course, Mr. Hochand went and said कि ये होने वाला है. तो उन्होंने उनको वार्निंग दे दी थी. अदरवाइज यहाँ सिंध में as such they felt कोई इतना इशू नहीं है, and certainly not in Karachi. So they were before they could do anything, उनको उन्होंने सबको अरेस्ट कर दिया. उसमें से कुछ लोग भाग गए थे, उनका ताकुब किया गया. जो मैंने जो पढ़ा है इट्स प्रीटी खौफनाक कि जहाँ इस वक्त एम्प्रेस मार्केट है वहां पर उनको तोप पे बांध के उड़ा दिया था. एक पता नहीं एक बरेलवी थे, एक कौन थे. And others were chopped up and thrown into the nalas because उनकी जिंदगी भर उनकी आत्मा को सुकून नहीं होगा. And some were sent to Kala Pani, the famous Kala Pani, Andaman Islands. So it was very horrifying what happened. And for many years, people would come. This is again anecdotal. People would come and यहाँ पे गुलाब की पत्तियां डालते थे to kind of honor that. और इन्होंने कहा ये कहीं बहुत ज्यादा political चीज ना बन जाए. So we are told that the Empress Market was put there, although it was done much afterwards. This is 18 something. So many years afterwards, at least 50 saal baad hi hua hoga. And so this idea that इसमें यहाँ पे कर दो ताकि बात ही खत्म हो जाए कि इसके नीचे या ये जगह की sanctity खराब हो जाए. So some people have said कि इसको why do we go there? You know, we should not. But I actually think it's the fact that it's there, it's never going to move. We know the story and it's fine. So this picture actually is not of there. The British love to deny हमने कभी ऐसा नहीं किया, but these are Sardarji, Sikhs were, and there's a very famous artist Russian artist who makes these paintings. So only the British administrators could go over there and would get all this. And again, Strachan designed it, who also designed Meriwether Tower, DJ Science College, Bolton Market. So he was quite a key figure, him and Moses Somake, who was interesting. He's done the Flagstaff House, Newell's Mansion, that क्या उसको कहते हैं जहाँ Compass, you know, उसके सामने tea house next to Metropole Hotel. वो उन्होंने बनाया and Cafe Grand. उसका कुछ एक और Bertie Compass, something it used to be. And also Khalitina Hall. So Moses Somake was a Jewish architect of Iraqi origin, but born in Lahore. So very interesting. हाँ बना हुआ है. But Strachan was not Jewish, so I don't know why it was there.
I still am obviously
Like Gandhi ji की sculpture था in front of our High Court. वो बढ़िया.
Oh, start.
The Star of David है.
बहुत बड़ा बना.
But I'm wondering whether it's meant to be Star of David because it's that double. Because Strachan certainly was not Jewish, and I don't think Meriwether was Jewish. So क्यों बनाया होगा? I'm not sure. But there were many, like Lord Reading was Jewish. नहीं और हो सकता है कि वो हिंदुओं में भी उसकी कोई अहमियत
नहीं, actually pointed star जो है, sorry, 6-pointed star was actually the star which was used by all the religions and communities since all times. The 5-star was adopted quite later, maybe in 17th or 18th century. It was not there. That's why it's all there. Well, it was the thing that was there. 6-pointed star was used all the time.
Or maybe it had something to because we already had Freemasons here by then. Maybe उनका भी कोई उसमें link हो, you know.
Don't forget that you
वो आ चुका है अखबारों में, online भी आ चुका है.
कितनी जगहों पे swastikas होते हैं, but they have nothing to do with the Nazis. So it's
Whether
the
it's
same
right
sort of-
facing or left facing
Yeah.
was very help होता है. So so Khalitina Hall also had Somake, sorry.
The star was used as an Abrahamic symbol because the Star of David is also called the Seal of Solomon. So it was used to be an Islamic symbol. Morocco के flag पर originally 6-pointed star ही होता था.
So it was above religions and more like a umbrella, like जैसे आप कह रहे हैं. So very interesting. Symbols are very interesting. So this also Moses Somake made this Khalitina Hall, which is such a interesting thing because it's very unlike the architecture. हमारे वहाँ ज़्यादातर Gothic, Venetian Gothic होता है या Indo-Saracen as they call it, like Mohatta Palace is Indo-Saracen, so is KMC, या Frey Hall is, you know, Venetian Gothic. So this was very unusual to have this very classical building. And we're told that it's because it was meant to be a center of learning and to make it look as much like a Greek kind of place of learning. So Palladian style में ये बनाया गया. This was the first building that was funded by a Muslim, public building. नहीं तो normally Parsis, Hindus, TJ वगैरह ये सारे उन्हीं के बने हुए हैं, all the schools. So this was the first one, and he was a Khoja businessman. I cannot find too much about him. I've been reaching out to the Khoja community to find out more about him, मगर nobody knows much about him. और उनका खानदान कहाँ है वो भी नहीं
मुसलमानों के
पता
पास
चला.
पैसे होते कहाँ थे? बात सारी है. They were kept aside.
Yeah.
And let me tell you a little anecdote, which is historical. This man came from India about 30 years ago, and he stayed with Zia Muhyiddin Sahab, उनके दोस्त थे, and he was ex-Lahorite. So he came to our office and he wanted to send a telex in Lahore. So he shot off a telex. And then he came to me and he said, look, I've shot off a telex. I've given my address. I've said Lahore. I have not said Pakistan. So I said, why have you not said Pakistan? He said, because Lahore is part of India and we're all the same. And I used to live here and I have fond memories of Lahore. And my dad was a member of the Millionaires Club of Lahore. There were over 100 families who used to get together under this banner. So when I asked him, of these 100 families, millionaire families in Lahore, how many were Muslim? He said, not even one. So they were kept to aside because of the fact that they would collect together, etc. But generally speaking, they were not the moneyed class. Like the Parsis bought a lot of property in Karachi, and they were invited to come and settle and buy and so on. And entitled and encouraged and given loans and bank loans. So wealth ऐसे accumulate होती है, ऐसे तो नहीं. So there were few and far between in the subcontinent.
So I read an article by somebody called Rita, and second name is Parsi, but she's not Parsi, who used to, her family lived here. It was either Vikaji or Kawasi, I'm not sure. Her family lived over here, and she did a very interesting analysis. She said, Takriban, all the urban areas were dominated by Hindu businessmen. They were the most educated, they were business people, and they owned property and businesses of a variety of things. And in Sindh, at least, she said that the Muslims were the agricultural landlords. So it was they had the land, they had the, how to run everything. So it must have been a very different time when they all left, at 47. So kitne ek vacuum, a kind of business community ka vacuum ho gaya hoga, I think. And in Karachi, it was really the Memon business people who were the first to invest, because and that also, if you read their book about Memon history, जो Memon Foundation ने बनाई है, they didn't put it as a idealism, but they said that when they were in Bombay, they were always kept at the second level. And this was an opportunity for them to also grow. So, they may have been rich, magar unki authority nahi thi. So it's a very, again, something to be explored. I don't think in terms of architecture. क्योंकि कराची में एक अजीब चीज थी ना, कभी खाना कलात को दे दिया, कभी कुछ कर दिया इसमें, कभी किसी की रूल थी इसमें, Summa and Sumros and Argun, and then Talpurs were the last, before the British came.
Mm-hmm.
So unki, according to Arif, unki basically chungi, it was more to do with earning money. So they had the chungi where, in fact, our अभी भी हमारा custom house है, apparently वहीं पर होती थी. Again, I've सुनी भी बातें that they would, for all traders, they had to give a tax. It used to be, I think, 25%. When the British came, I think they made it a little different. So I think it was more, it wasn't, it wasn't the Sone ki Chidiya till then, Karachi. It was a kind of for traders, for goods to come and goods to go. It was not really a place to settle in at that time. So I don't think it was something where you want to come and build and make your, you know. So this building has, yeah. Yeah.
So at least
Mike.
So there's this place, a big graveyard, Chaukhandi. It's near Gulshan Hadid, and it has graves from the time of Talpurs. So where were those people living if they had graves in Karachi?
I think शायद ये बेहतर बताएंगे, but हैदराबाद
माइक इस्तेमाल करने की
सिंध बलूचिस्तान की जो अमीर से जो जहन हो गई थी उसकी यहाँ पे गुरुद्वारा मौजूद कर रहे हैं।
नहीं, मगर इसमें Sarkhans were Turk. Most of the graves are of the Tarkhan.
तरखान ग्रोथ दिया इसके बाद वो यहाँ
इसी तरह के आपको graves मिलेंगे मंगू पीर में. You see, it's very interesting.
Even near the Mubarak village,
हाँ.
they are similar.
Mubarak village, yes, same.
Yeah.
Near Oxford,
Sorry.
near Oxford of Mubarak village.
मैं कहीं कहती कि चौकंडी में अगर जो है वो खवातीन की भी कब्रें हैं और उसके जो ऑर्नामेंटेशन है वो पूरे जेवरात बने हुए हैं और जो मर्दों की है उसके ऊपर जो कार्विंग डिफरेंट है, तलवार और ढाल और इस तरह से उससे पता चल जाता है आपको कि कौन औरत की खबर है और कौन सी मर्द की खबर है और उनके फिर हायरार्की भी है कि किस लेवल के वो थे, कोई जनरल था या सिपाही था, सब चीजें पता चल जाती है।
रहने वाले नहीं थे
साहब ने इनके मुतालिक काफी काम किया था हिस्ट्री में और वो सिंधी में फिर फारसी वगैरह से लेकर
वही नाम है राष्ट्रीय साहब जो मैं कह रही थी कि वो 19 उनकी किताब में जो उन्होंने उसका कहा था। लेकिन इस पे है बहुत सारी तहकीक और वो लिटरेरी लेवल पर है। समहाउ इस पे कोई चीज हम लोग तो वी आर कैजुअल रीडर्स तो मुश्किल होता है, बट आई थिंक एंड मकली टूम्स आर आल्सो दे फैंटास्टिक। उनके भी बहुत बड़ा,
लेकिन मकली तो एक एस्टैब्लिश्ड छट्टा शहर के पास था, लेकिन अगर हम यहाँ देख रहे हैं तो यहाँ कोई आबादी आसपास
there must have been, you see, मगर there must have been। वही मैं कह रही हूँ कि अगर ये कहाँ पे थे ये लोग, मंगू पीर में वहाँ पे क्यों है, was it something related to that? And ये mostly जो ये तरखान जो ग्रुप है, I even asked हमारे जो Turkish consul general कि who were these people, why are they here, कि कोई वो गायब हो गए, so he gave a long list of people जिनके surnames show that they're offspring of that group, so they are connected somewhere. So this place has had many interesting things happen over here. I don't know if I mentioned it in the next slide, but there was a native general library which was in 2 rooms and somewhere nearby. And it became, imagine ऐसा भी वक्त था कराची में जहाँ एक लाइब्रेरी बहुत छोटी हो गई लोगों के लिए। तो ये फिर इन्होंने गवर्नमेंट से इन्होंने कुछ 3,000 स्क्वायर यार्ड्स का एक प्लॉट उनको दिया गया। कुछ लाइब्रेरी वालों के पास पैसे थे, 18,000 इन्होंने दिए और 15,000 सिटी ने दिया। And this place was built with 2 reading rooms and a hall, community hall. और इसमें बहुत चीजें हैं, हम तो अभी सीख ही रहे हैं इसमें क्या क्या हुआ। इसमें शायरी, ड्रामे और इस तरह की चीजें तो बहुत ही हैं, but it was of course also COVID center recently. But this is where Qaid-e-Azam and Pakistan was made. So in October 47, he called all the chiefs of army staff and all his amla and he says, उनको कैसे चलाना है। इसमें गांधी जी भी आए हैं, इसमें जो हिंदू यानी anyone, even today, because we've been involved in restoring this building.
Yeah, 1960.
Maulana
Mohammed Ali Jawhar Club. 1962, I played a tournament in this hall.
Badminton.
Table tennis.
Okay, so it's very interesting. It was a, for anyone and everything, and no charges. अभी भी कुछ एक minimum 2,000 charges ऐसे कुछ होते हैं for the thing. It was a very well used. Doctors who were going on vaccination tours. This is where they would meet. It was and यहाँ से वो बातें होती थी. So I think, and we've actually scanned most of the books in the collection which are online. So बहुत बोसीदा हालत में थे before better scandal. So this was a very interesting place and it still is. And it's most well known for this Muqaddama. This Muqaddama was very interesting because उस वक्त Turkey में जब First World War में they had used the Muslim Indian soldiers to conquer Muslim lands, including Jerusalem and all these places, because they said कि आप यहाँ पे आए क्योंकि आप it will be better than having Hindus, and उनके खुद तो फौजी नहीं थे, तो mostly Indians, 1 million Indians who fought in the wars. So Muslims felt very compromised, and उस वक्त खिलाफत का भी मसला था that breaking up of the Ottoman Empire meant breaking up of the Khilafat. And so the Khilafat movement was created, जिसमें Gandhi ji also and the Hindus were also involved because they saw कि कल आज ये हैं, कल हम होंगे, and that if any rallying point to overthrow the British would have our support. Similarly, the Muslims took part in the non-cooperation movement and burning of foreign cloth, and unka bhi bahut, so it was a very tight thing, and Biyama and Amjadi Begum were also very involved with Tilak ke saath and various people. So it was a very different time, and even in this there is a Hindu who is also from. So in Kakri grounds in Riyari, there was a conference over here. अब World War खत्म हो चुकी थी, मगर Britain was about to attack Turkey again. तो उन्होंने कहा not on my watch. We are not. Every Muslim soldier must leave the army, should not encourage anyone else, and this is against your principles, against your religion to do this. So उसके बाद, this is 1920. And the trial was 21, but 19 से लेकर 20 तक ये बात शुरू हो चुकी थी. And he had written quite a lot about it. Everyone had written about it. So in Lyari, they addressed the crowd to say the fatwa was actually given by the Deoband Maulvis. कि ये haram है. So this was spread everywhere, and यहाँ पे उन्होंने कहा कि do you agree with the resolution or not? तो उनको उन्होंने उस वक्त नहीं पकड़ा, but finally इधर उधर से जगह जगह से इसमें जो स्वामी शंकर के अलावा पीर गुलाम मुजद्दिदी was a big figure in Sindh, and Maulana Madni, and these were from other places, Kanpuri. Saifuddin Kichlu was very well known for his role in protesting about Jallianwala Bagh. So they were firebrands all over, and so they came to be known as the Karachi Seven. Or उनकी बेटी जो है मौलाना मोहम्मद अली जौहर की, उनकी सबसे बड़ी की बेटी की एक ऑडियो भी है, in which she's saying कि how रास्ता पूरा बंद होता था, और इसके you can imagine एक साइड पे अंग्रेज soldiers, एक साइड पे local soldiers, and किसी को इजाजत नहीं, बाप द्वाया लगाया हुआ था. It was a big thing. I don't know why they decided to do it in a public place. I haven't been able to find out, but it was a very big thing. And इन्होंने जो जुज था उनके मुकदमे का, he says we don't need to have a defense. We have no defense lawyer. He said firstly वो उठे ही नहीं जब वो आए judge. They wouldn't get up. So उन्होंने कुर्सियां हटा दी, तो उन्होंने जमीन पे वो बैठ गए कि हम मानते ही नहीं है आपकी अदालत. And then they said कि we don't need defense because it is not we who are on trial, but it is the courts, the British rule that is on trial. And the point was, they said Victoria के ज़माने से हमें बताया गया कि हम अपनी मजहब को फॉलो कर सकते हैं. हमारा मजहब ये कहता है, आप अगर हिंदू से कहें कि गाय काटो, वो नहीं काटेगा, तो आप उसको बगावत का उसी पर मुकदमा चलाएंगे. हमारे लिए we are not allowed to go and kill another Muslim without a proper cause. So उसके ऊपर, this was something that shook the British government, because this was the first time. It was not about an event, but it was about the government itself that was being brought legally into question. And Gandhi ji said, this is the beginning of the end, this trial. So the way you have, Minto Park or Iqbal Park now in Lahore, related to the freedom movement, I think this place is related to the freedom movement over here.
उसका नाम भी मौलाना मोहम्मद अली पार्क ही, ककड़ी ग्राउंड को। ये ककड़ी ग्राउंड जिसे कहते हैं, वो मौलाना मोहम्मद अली जौहर पार्क ही।
और बहुत अगर आपको किसी को इंटरेस्ट हो, in fact you're just scanning it and putting it on the library, अगर आप उनका actual किताब पढ़े ना, it's लाजवाब. I mean, जिस तरह से वो बात करते थे as an equal, it was never जी हुजूरी दूर दूर तक नहीं थी, and वो बहुत he was so well read. That's another story. So they were accused of sedition, and they were found innocent of sedition, जिसमें फांसी भी हो सकती थी या फिर life imprisonment, but they still put them in jail for 2 years, बामुशक्कत in Karachi jail. फिर यहाँ 1 साल बाद, because यहाँ पे बहुत मिलना जुलना हो रहा था, तो यहाँ से फिर उन्होंने उनको अलग अलग जेलों में भेज दिया था in various parts of India. So, but they were kept बामुशक्कत, which means के उनको चक्की चलाते हुए, and इनका एक बड़ा प्यारा सा खत है where he says कि मैं जो वो शीशी की बोतलें जब वो खाने में नींबू होता है, imagine they give नींबू to prisoners. I don't think they do that now. तो he says जो मैं उसको उसमें बोतल में डाल के मेरा अचार बन जाता है. So they took it very well. But it was very, and he wrote most of his poetry, like Faiz and all these people wrote a lot of their poetry. And he, in fact, before this, they were put in jail for a very long time as an internment without even any charges during First World War. And that is when he actually came to read the Quran properly, because almost so it's very fascinating. Yes, there was a man called Kennedy. उनको तो उन्होंने उनकी खाल दे दी, because constantly he says, don't talk about religion. This is not something. So he would say, okay, if you're not qualified to talk about religion, please bring someone else who is. Because the whole point is this. He said the muqaddama is God versus man. That is the whole point. Does God's law supersede man's law? Or does man's law supersede? And he gives hawala of everyone, including Joan of Arc and everyone you can think of.
So the judges were
Angrez. And there were two, one was called Elphinstone, who was the prosecution lawyer. The other one was specially brought from UP. His name was Paulston. And they tried their best. And they had about 30 or 40 gawah, all apne hi log. We said, unhone ye kaha tha, wo yahan rahe the, wo idhar gaye. He was in the first, you see, there were two stages. First, they have one, Sessions Court was the one with all these people in it. Before that, they judge, is it worthy of going to trial or not? So usme talati, in fact, one of the talatis told my mother, I'm very sorry, it was one of my ancestors. Yeah. So that was in this was the Sessions Court. That one was called, sorry, I've forgotten what it's called. It's some technical name. So pehle wo hua tha, and then the actual court and the trial and all that happened.
The interesting thing is, presumably the judges were Christians. So this line of defense, the God's law versus your law, I find that happening.
Yeah, but he used hawala of British writers who made the same point.
That's
Yes.
yeah.
And he said that if you stop hanging the picture of the king, because you are going against what he has said, which is we have religious freedom. So are you following him? Do you expect the king to change his point of view? So उन्होंने उनको बहुत एक logic, and he says कि he says another very interesting thing. He says कि I'm not against the British. I love the British, but I love them in their country. Right? So it was very interesting. You are good in your country and we are good in our country.
Yeah, thanks.
Huh. Yeah. We're just putting it, कल scan हुआ है, the Urdu translation, although the trial was in English, और उसका उसी जमाने का Urdu translation, so it will be up soon. But it is also available online, you can find it online. But these people are amazing. I feel we are far more colonized today than they were under colonization, because they knew where they stood, what is right and what is wrong. हमने इसको इतना internalize कर दिया है that we sort of just can't distinguish. In different forms. You see, and it's become so much a part of our everyday life. And people think it's about speaking English. It's not really about speaking English. It's about having an education that must be based on GPA, instead of muntly sitting there and teaching someone. So, I mean, then that's a whole other discussion. So there was also a Swadeshi movement, which is also, I want to find the link to Karachi. इसमें Nusrat Vanji and Siva, उनके cousin or brother or relative, Bombay में अभी भी है Bharat tiles. So the tiles used to come from Minton tiles, so ceramic tiles. And these people work very hard. And if you go to any of these old houses, which sadly people don't realize they're standing on this piece of history, they come as from tile bacha do. So these tiles, these are all from my Hala's house, from Foster's house. Yeah, these are all from her house. So उन्हीं के कमरों and इसका रंग खराब नहीं होता. I mean, beautifully made. So this was their protest. जिस तरह से दादाभाई नौरोजी ने, he lived in England, and he was the first one to raise the voice कि हमें economically exploit किया जा रहा है. तो हर किसी ने अपने अपने तरीके से, किसी ने लोकल कपड़ों की फैक्ट्री लगा दी, किसी ने इन्होंने टाइलों की कर दी. So very soon, all the tiles of all the public buildings, whether they were government or residential, they were using these tiles, which are made of concrete, colored concrete. These are not ceramic, but they're so beautifully made. They just don't. So I think this was very important. Other whole iski ek factory, which again I'm desperate to find out, was near Soldier Bazaar, near Lawrence Road. I keep thinking शायद उस वक्त कोई छोटा सा बच्चा होगा जो अब बूढ़ा हो गया होगा, who might know कि कहाँ था, किस तरह का process था, because Mohammadi tiles is doing it, but it's not of this quality. Swadeshi, Nusrat Vanji tiles was a Swadeshi movement कि हम local बनाएंगे, हम import नहीं करेंगे. Swadesh means homegrown. Right. So this was like saying this is that we will make them local, as they did with other things.
ये नुसरवांजी का जमशेद नुसरवांजी से बताओ.
हाँ बिल्कुल same Nusrat, father of Karachi.
Yes.
हाँ.
Okay.
Father of Karachi, such an amazing man.
तो आप कराएंगी बात.
अभी there he is.
Yes.
Ask and you shall receive. So now he was, I think, a very interesting person, and he was a very long period in as before, not just mayor, even before he became mayor. He was a very key member. लोग कहते हैं कि the real sense of Karachi as a city, connected city, happened in his time. Like local, not अंग्रेजों के कहने पर, but personal ownership of the city really happened in his time, and I think Pakistan is also honored him. So there are many things about him. In fact, ये जो गुलभाई maternity home है ना, ये भी इनका बना, उनकी businesses यहाँ बहुत थी. If you look at you can actually come across old directories of 1907, 1914, and it's very interesting to see they've done in, the names are done according to British, Hindu, Muslim, you know, Catholics, उनके उस तरह से, और फिर बीच में जो ads हैं, I find those very interesting to know that there were regularly हर हफ्ते यहाँ से कुछ 5-6 shipping जाती थी. There were liners, people traveled to Europe by, you know, Marseille से होते हुए जाते थे. It was a very happening place from what I understand. And so I think, even our Kawasji, jo hain, Ardeshir Kawasji, their family, they were also stevedores. They made their fortune in shipping. In fact, ek kehte hain, I don't know which one of them, कि जब अंग्रेज यहाँ से जा रहे थे, they told them कि we don't want to leave our guns and it's too much to take. तो इनको ले जाके समंदर में हमारे फेंक दो, तो वो भी उन्होंने काफी चीज से करवाया था. So it's very interesting, you know, the linking between people. In fact, one book I would highly recommend everyone reads. It's a trilogy by Amitav Ghosh, and it's called Sea of Poppies, and the second one is River of Smoke. So usme bhi, it's, you know, the Parsis are the shipping people, and you know, they were very interesting. So there were stevedores and so on. So streets used to be, which you've seen. See now how lucky you are actually seeing. You know, this was quite something. Karachi was considered the cleanest city.
There's still
in
water,
all of
but
Asia.
the water is a bit.
In fact, we came during the washing when we were coming. Bathing. It was not washing, it was proper bathing. True. But at Kuwait bhi bahut the, you know. And there were water trucks for horses. And horses used to have straw hats ताकि उनको धूप ना लगे. You know, I mean, it was, people cared. Sorry? Maybe it might be, you know, mixture. ये पसंद आ गई तो इस्तेमाल कर दिया. You know, schools इतने थे, like इसी इलाके में कितनी libraries थी. You know, there were 4 or 5 libraries over here. So it was, and you know, वो एक ज़माना ही गुर्बत फिर भी थी. There were still rich areas and poor areas. But I think philanthropy भी बहुत थी. You know, अभी भी philanthropy बहुत है. But Karachi is considered to be one of the top 3 most philanthropic cities of the world. You know, that's a nice thing to have.
Yes.
फिलैंथ्रोपी तो नहीं है कराची में, चैरिटी. अगर फिलैंथ्रोपी होती तो शायद एंडाउमेंट फंड्स बन जाते हैं.
वो भी हैं.
पर चैरिटी.
Yeah, but वो भी हैं. लोगों ने schools. Well, I certainly agree to the point that there's no forward plan. That we need so many, you know, because I think education scholarships very important, and people give यहाँ के education scholarship जो already fees इतनी कम है, but when brilliant students want to go and study abroad, there is no money for them, and and then when we were young, our colleges are of very high quality, you know, so there's nobody ever thought of going to study elsewhere. In fact, even my brother is DMC Pedawar and, you know, is in the top 2% doctors in USA and so on. So,
colonization का after effect education का मौजूद था ना. ये missionary schools बने, St. Pat's and St. Paul and St. Joseph's and Mawa Farsi and BBS. उनकी जो reminiscence थी ना, वो 30-40 years तक तो चली, 80s तक तो चली है. उसके बाद we took over.
Well,
if you remember,
even when we took over, when you think of all the big local names, I think nationalization had a lot to do. Nationalization of education institutions. But the rest of the time तो नहीं था ना वैसी चीजों में. तो उसमें ये हो गया ना कि everyone was more concerned आप कौन सी grade में पढ़ा रहे हैं rather than आप क्या पढ़ा रहे हैं.
देखें, आपने रिच पोर और उसका जिक्र किया, वो तो हमेशा से है. Throughout history, our society was very balanced when there were 3 classes: the poor, the middle class, and the rich. It's when you have ultra rich, which leads to abject poverty. That's when it goes wrong. And this is a world scale issue, except for maybe China and some places. ये जब तक ठीक नहीं होगा, तब तक ये सिलसिला जारी रहेगा और
But
ये
ये
यहाँ का
global-
नहीं, it's coming,
it's global.
worldwide.
Yeah.
It's a worldwide, the richer, fewer, getting richer. Poor, abject poverty is increasing.
But I feel very proud of the rich people of Karachi, you know, because I think, I mean,
बेशक।
this is, आप लोगों ने कितना हुनर फाउंडेशन, सिटीजन्स फाउंडेशन,
बेशक।
स्कूल,
हाँ।
you know, they have set up institutions. I think that is an important thing. They were sitting in a place. I remember I'd come here for my own some things, so we were sitting in a radioactive room, जो नीचे का होता है ना. So this person said to me, sitting in a wheelchair, he says, हम अगर ये private में करते तो कितने का होता? So the other woman said, मेरे ख्याल में 60,000 का होता. तो she said, oh. And so I said कि देखें आप सिर्फ SIUT और अदीब रिजवी साहब की दुआएं जरूर कीजिएगा, मैं उनकी भी करें जो हर साल पैसे देते हैं.
बेशक।
Because the whole city gives so much. लोग 10 रुपए से लेकर 10,000, 10 करोड़, पता नहीं कितना देते हैं.
100 करोड़ देने में.
You know, so I certainly think but there's certain things public can't do. You know, when it comes to expanding, like TCF can make 1,000 schools or 1,500, whatever they are, but where you need several lakhs of schools,
Yes.
then
Very
it becomes something else.
We get there one day, inshallah.
But gee,
As a child, I seem to remember that there used to be cold drink called Nasarwanji. Was that so, Hannah? Yeah.
it might well have been.
So it was the same family. Okay.
The cold drink, there was no Coke or anything. Huh?
There was also Rogers.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful raspberry, lemon, raspberry, orange and ginger. Beautiful
Ginger.
flavors.
I remember ginger. I think one thing you forgot about the lending libraries of Karachi, which started from where the wheat clinic was, and all the way up to St. Pat's along the roadside. And then on Victoria Road, there used to be these cabins where you could trade your old things.
Yes, yes.
Tidbit and about there were, I don't know how many, 50, 60 cabins there on Victoria Road from Regal Chalk up to Bandar Road. It is laid up. जो भी
Even in our हमारे घर के पास एक पहली मंजिल पे एक बल्कि हमारे वहाँ एक बूढ़े साहब आते थे on a bicycle with
the bag.
satchels full of books. And he would come और हम उनसे हफ्ते भर की लेते थे, फिर वो अगले हफ्ते आते थे, हम उनको there you are. There you are. So
It is
and actually when they have this Itwar book bazaar, it's amazing how many people come to buy books. It's because the books are expensive that we can't buy them. मगर अगर आप 10-12 रुपए में कुछ कर सकते हैं, and a lot of people read online also now. So we can't really say from the sale of books.
Very strangely, ये जो आप बातें कर रही हैं और हम सब रिलेट भी कर रहे हैं, ये हमारे यहाँ डाई डाउन हो गया, लेकिन अगर बहुत सारे लोग कुछ ज्यादा वेल ट्रैवल्ड हैं, अगर आप यूरोप में जाएं तो ये अभी तक वहाँ है.
और बल्कि
being in stacks, अब वो कार्ड के बजाय एक वैन में आती है, बच्ची खड़ी हो जाती है, उसने कार्डबोर्ड लगा रखे हैं, a pound each, and you go and just sift through them and pick 7-8 books. और मैं देखता हूँ कि 20s में, 30s में, 40s में, all age brackets, they are buying books from there. हमारे यहाँ खत्म हो गया है.
No, but it's a very small. Yeah.
Prayer hall में होता है, but you recognize the same faces on the third Sunday. It's like yही.
Definitely.
So वो और diminishing minority है वो.
Right, and I was quite surprised to find that even with new publications, in a lot of these countries, the publication readership has grown. जितना लोग internet पे जा रहे हैं, उतना they want physical books. मगर they can afford it. We can't. हम लोग तो crack वाले वो भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं ना. We can't even afford to do Word, buy the original software because it's all so expensive.
Sorry for that, जो कर भी लेते हैं, ये अलग बात चली जाएगी. वो हमारे young parents भी अब justify करते हैं इसी को अपने बच्चों को. इस पे पढ़ लेते हैं ना, अब जरूरत क्या है किताब की? You know, if you किसी की young mother को अगर आप कहें.
Actually, you know, जो दुकानों में वो छोटे किताबचे मिलते थे, शहजादी गुलफाम और इस तरह की कहानियां. The Imran series, which were, you know, Jasusi Digest and all that, उसका भी रिवाज नहीं रहा because parents don't even sit and read with their children. हाँ, but who reads it? You see, जिद
तो
ये लोग
कुछ
पढ़ते हैं.
हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं जो पीछे बैठे हुए हैं और वो नजर नहीं आ रहे क्योंकि और वो सवाल पूछना चाह रहे हैं. तो डायलॉग यहीं पर है जी. माइक करीब आ जाए. माइक
क्या ये ले भाई, क्योंकि हमारी ऑनलाइन बस आप बात कर रहे हैं.
थैंक यू नीक, बहुत जबरदस्त डिटेल्स हैं. और ये आपने एक ये बात की ना कि फॉर यू नो द थिंग्स दैट वी हैव टू बी प्राउड ऑफ इन द रिच इन टर्म्स ऑफ द philanthropy in front of the systems. Speaking historically as well and also present, ये जो बिल्डिंग्स बनाई जाती हैं और उनके नाम दिए जाते हैं, उनको इंडाउ किए जाते हैं, वो तो इस वजह से भी कि रिच चाहते हैं उनका नाम रहे और वो इन चीज़ों से जाने जाएं. लेकिन यही मैं जरूरी नहीं कि ये जो खानदान जिनको जिक्र आपने यहाँ पे किया, लेकिन बहुत से अमीर खानदान ऐसे हैं कि वो एक हाथ से देते हैं और फिर उतना डबल साइफन ऑफ भी कर लेते होंगे. तो जो बिल्डिंग भी हमारे रिच की तरफ से हो रही है और डिस्ट्रक्शन भी हमारे रिच की तरफ से ही अक्सर होती है in terms of what they steal for themselves or in terms of how they watch silently while it's their responsibility to stop someone else from stealing, right? So many of these buildings, and we talk about philanthropy, but when we talk widely about other things which these families could have been doing to stop other groups from developing the city or taking it in directions which are more pro-poor. So a bit of that insight would be really welcome. Thank you.
I think that's a very key point actually, because you know, I have no objection to someone putting their name. I think it's much better live in a modest house, put all your money, don't have a 6,000 गज का plot in which आपके बच्चे तो सब बाहर हैं. आप अपने फैमिली के नाम पे एक स्कूल, एक हॉस्पिटल या कुछ बना लें, fine, you know, like the Rangoonwala Center or Dawood's Foundation or something. The issue, I think, that point that you're making, which I think is very key, is the staying silent. It's not that people don't know the value of these things, but they feel very powerless against the developers. They feel powerless because the city does not support them. You know, that is the main key. Like we have something like 500 listed buildings in Karachi by the Heritage Committee. But उन्होंने list कर दिया, उनके पास कोई executive arm नहीं है. They can, हाँ, जो रोक नहीं सकते. I mean, DHA में आप मिट्टी डाल के देख लें रास्ते पर, फौरन 2 लोग मोटरसाइकिल पे आके कहेंगे जुर्माना और हटाओ इसको. So why don't we have an executive? Is it a lack of will? Arif Hassan years ago had done some research where he said 1 साल में 17 estate agents मारे गए. And he says, how is this possible? Who would want to kill an estate agent? But it's all property related, and Karachi has become a plunder ground, especially in the last 30 years, because we don't go to our cinema, we don't, you know, बहुत सारी चीजें, street life एक तरह से खत्म हो गई हालात की वजह से. So there is now a great interest. I have noticed there's such an interest. There are all these interesting cultural activities happening, whether it was at the Khalidina Arts Council, bhara rehta hai, music conference bhara rehta hai. There's this wonderful place called Nani Ghar, which I visited. There's Kitab, huh? T2F. T2F to, you know, sort of a revive ho raha hai. But there are everywhere, there is suddenly a desire ke Napa, you know, लियारी में इतने हो गए हैं, like Meher Ghar and, you know, various places वहाँ पे हो गए हैं. People are making films, people are expressing themselves through art, through poetry, through all manner of things. What happens is our city is not keeping up with the people's needs. You know, I mean, when you're dealing with a city when you're dealing with a building control authority that does not have top architects deciding whether a building can be passed or not, then aesthetics kahan se aayegi? How, you know, the engineering council seems to be powerless to say this building is not safe. It's not earthquake resistant, it's whatever. इस जगह के ऊपर या ये कि आप बना रहे हैं जहाँ एक घर था वहाँ 30 घर बना रहे हैं at least, and उसमें पानी की निकासी all this stuff that's happening in the city falling apart, it's because, we're adding so much weight on a system that can't handle it. So that requires major planning. And, in order to have that major planning, you have to have faith in the future of the city. I mean, if you look at a city like Singapore, it was worse than Karachi at one time. Then the way they turned it around, they said, make it beautiful, make it attractive, add parks. It used to be called a city in the park. Now it used to be called a park in the city. Now it's called a city in the park. They found that the number of investments went exponentially high when the place was attractive. They also had ease of doing business or whatever other things they had. I don't even mind if Malik Riaz comes and says, "मैं सारी buildings को सही कर दूंगा." I don't mind. I don't know. I just feel, who is going to love this city? And Yasmin Lari once said something when she was writing her Tatta book. She says, it seems we cannot stop the buildings from falling. We can only document them. So even if we did 3D documentation of the buildings, so that maybe one day in the future, like आप देखें बहुत सारे European countries में bombing के बाद बहुत सारी इमारतें दोबारा बन गई because they had the system. I don't know. I just feel this city needs love.
इसको आप अगर चाहें तो इस तरह sum up कर दें कि people हमारे शहर के बारे में, people who mind, they don't matter, and people who matter
Don't
don't
mind.
mind.
There's a joke about this.
Yeah,
We'll play a game of mind over matter. You don't matter and we don't mind. No, but she's saying something more important, which I'll come to again, is that we have professional bodies, right? So it's not about you and I protesting. The Sindh Building Control Authority, which used to be Karachi Building Authority, they should be keeping an eye. We're paying their salaries for them to keep an eye. The people like, Engineering Council should be keeping an eye. Or architecture fraternities, IAP, TCATP, all these people, they should be keeping an eye. They should be actually not just saying हम अपना दामन नहीं गंदा करते, हम इस झमेले में नहीं जाते. They have to become, till they do it, they have knowledge and authority of how the city should go. And the sad thing is, these are the people who love to go on holidays to some, place, बड़ा खूबसूरत, हम फ्रांस में chateau में गए थे. हमारे यहाँ इतनी प्यारी प्यारी जगह, and people, you see, there's lime mortar. Right? I went to this place जो Gandhi Garden के करीब में जो truck market है, वहाँ पे there's a very beautiful hexagonal building made of stone. And I said, this is so unusual, इसकी history क्या है? जो लोग रह रहे थे उनको ये तो नहीं पता. But पुरानी वही सीढ़ियाँ थी, ठीक की. And they just said कि हम mason तो हमको कह रहा है इसको तोड़ के cement की बनाओ, because इसको हम repair नहीं कर सकते, because they know how to work in cement. And not lime mortar, जो यहाँ की traditional है. So all you have to do is have a team that knows how to do lime mortar. अभी एक building, after this building fell in Lyari, और फिर एक और गिरने के उसमें, उन्होंने Dawn में बनाई beautiful old building कि ये भी is unsafe. I would have said, we are going to remove the people and let's make this safe. It's a beautiful old building. So I don't know, till you get aesthetic people or pressure from people in there, and we have to also stop saying, I mean, people tell us, आप खालिदीना हॉल में लगे हुए हैं, KMC से काम कर रहे हैं, फलाना कर. You have to negotiate, you have to be able to, because in the end, शहरक में जाना पड़ता है ना. I mean, if I was at Karachi University rather than a private university, if SIUT is Shahrag, you're not. So I think you have to be part of the solution.
Sorry,
which is,
one
I think,
point.
what you're saying.
Sorry, Durriya, are you done with the show? Because
Yeah,
we'd
we
like to
can-
see all of it.
We can stop here.
No,
we don't
but
have
if you
to
have
do it.
more, then we can talk.
I just go thug,
Okay.
thug, thug, hai na?
Achha.
So this I'll just go through. These are stories everyone knows. It's other than the fact that Jinnah was told mat jana open carriage mein by Mountbatten, तुम्हारे जिंदगी पे हमला होगा. And he says मैं तो जाऊंगा because they wanted कि उसको इतनी publicity ना मिले. This my mother used to always tell us about, that the first government offices were tents and cigarette के पैकेट्स के ऊपर वो लिखते थे. Staples होते नहीं थे तो कांटों से किया जाता था. So that's something our government servants should remember. And we forget about this. And then, this you all know about. There was a lot of entertainment happening. There was even a golf course between Kent Station and Jinnah Hospital. Jinnah Hospital used to be US Air Force Walon ka hospital.
Not US, are they?
No, I think it was American.
No, are they?
आपकी जो केबीटी की बिल्डिंग है ये भी ब्रिटिश उसमें
Yeah, 400 people. So this is now, this stupid icon tower has happened, and this is बेचारे को sideline कर दिया है.
You were remembering the violence.
Yes, that's why I'm saying अपने गुनाह धुलाओ, शहर को बचाओ. That would be my mantra to him. नहीं कोई बात नहीं, हम माफ कर देंगे अगर वो बस हमारा शहर बना है. And somebody should do it. At least he's putting his money here. No? So the Rajdi Saab का इन्होंने जिक्र किया था. This is where it's very interesting. Rajdi Saab is written कि 6 बजे शाम में एक साहिबा लाल साड़ी में आके लेडी लॉयड पियर पे टहलती थी. She would do her exercise up and down it. And all these young boys used to dress and borrow really good clothes. They didn't have a car, तो किसी की borrow करके यूं करके गाड़ी के पास खड़े होते थे कि शायद उसकी नजर हम पे पड़ जाए, और कभी नहीं पड़ती थी. I mean, they were so tamizar, but he's written a very sweet article. Lot of Theosophical Hall is another overlooked. And Mayat Saab has passed away, but he was very scared कि मेरे पीछे मौलाना पड़ जाएंगे, फलाना होगा. So they changed the name to Nusarmanji instead of Theosophical Halls. But so many things happened. Look at this, Gujarati song, Persian patriotic song, on the people drama hote the. And Chagla Saab, who composed our anthem, and Fonesca, who's the local Anglo-Indian who actually set it to the band.
So I once worked as a research assistant for a professor in Prague. Mike mein bol raha hu. So I work as a research assistant for a professor in Prague, and he was working on the Theosophical Society. So I went to this Theosophical Hall library, and it was closed. And he asked me that they used to issue monthly newsletters. They were just papers, and he wanted me to find out all the issues. And some of the issues, मतलब उसमें दीमक लगी हुई थी. Some were in the dustbins, कहीं कहीं कचरे में पड़े हुए थे. बहुत ढूंढ के एक करके निकाले. कुछ बीच में से नहीं मिले, फिर वो स्कैन करके उन्होंने प्राग में मंगाया. So Karachi was center of the international theosophical movement.
There are books, but they're hidden upstairs. He says I can't put them in a public space like.
मैंने उनसे इजाज़त लेके किया था. वहाँ पे कुछ बहुत सारी इस तरह की चीज़ें भी मिली. और दूसरा ये कि मारिया मॉन्टेसरी को यहाँ पे बार बार बुलाते थे, और उनसे पूरा मॉन्टेसरी सिस्टम यहाँ एस्टेब्लिश करवाया. Yes.
इब्न ईशा का दफ्तर भी हुआ करता था वहाँ पर.
लेकिन खौफ फसाद खल्क की वजह से वहां से हटा दी गई.
अब खल्क गलत कह रहे हैं, उसकी जगह कुछ और आना चाहिए.
नियर कराची में तो खातिम अलवी का भी दौर था.
जी
खातिम अलवी साहब रहे, और जी इसके अलावा भी हमारे पोस्टमैन चंद थे, तो इनकी भी बड़ी खिदमत है जाके ऑफिस में.
In fact, Miss Geeta जो हेजल का भी जिक्र किया ना, तो उन्हीं के तो वो grandfather I suppose थे, है ना, who was the last I think, but one of them, yes. But इन लोगों सब ने बहुत कुछ किया है. I'd also like to just take this opportunity to plug one thing, which is हमने एक बहुत अच्छा scanner दिया हुआ है for Khalik Dina Hall project. If anyone has any old documents, books, or anything that needs to be preserved, let us scan it. We give it all back to you, but scan it at least. If you want it to be made public, we can put it on our website. If not, we will scan and give back to you, but preserve all the stuff that you can find. Because, apart from floods and earthquakes and America doing bombardment or Israel or whatever it is, these things don't last forever. There's some very, very beautiful libraries and collections around here. Uch Sharif mein, I'm told कि वहाँ उसकी library में तैमूर लंग का हाथ का लिखा हुआ खत है. And I don't know उन चीजों का क्या होगा. So scan, even if it's poor quality scan. So this I think was a very interesting time. To present Siddhartha. I was very part of यहाँ पे Jesus Christ Superstar was presented at Ibrahim by auditorium. And I can't imagine, and it was so popular कि उसको extend करना पड़ा for another 2 weeks. Now, I can't even imagine going to a public place and saying हम हज़रत ईसा का कुछ बनाएंगे.
मैं वही कह रहा हूँ ना कि ये 30 साल तक देखें 47 से 77 प्लस माइनस ज़िया-उल-हक का नाम लें या ना लें 47 30 साल तक ये असर रहा है. जो लोगों ने 70s लेट 70s इनको याद है ना इस कमरे में they have reminisced, they can recollect. बट मेरा एक सवाल है, ये जो एंटीथेसिस हम देख रहे हैं कराची का नोहा जो है, if I may call it a नोहा, जो हम पढ़ते रहते हैं,
शहर अशोक.
हाँ, शहर अशोक कराची का नोहा. अगर मैं कभी कभी अपने आप को कन्विंस करता हूँ कि ये अतीत साहब ने कहा कि मुसलमान गरीब थे और क्योंकि माइग्रेंट कम्युनिटी बहुत आई, फिर ऊपर से भी आया तो कराची बिल्कुल एक हो गया. लेकिन ये मामला लाहौर के साथ क्यों नहीं हुआ? अगर 47 was the watershed which turned the country around and 77 was parting it into haves and have-nots. Why didn't it happen with Lahore? Why Karachi?
Much about Lahore.
Why Karachi is so ravaged?
I don't know about Lahore, but एक लोग कहते हैं because even when people say कि मुहाजिरीन आए और ये गड़बड़ हुई, people forget that 80% of muhajirin were Punjabi, went from Punjab to Punjab, and about the remaining came to all over Sindh and Punjab in various places. Punjab में ज़बान का एक बहुत बड़ा impact होता है. I think वहाँ पे कोई मसला नहीं था. Although abhi bhi I'm told that they have a very strong understanding of Muhajir Punjabi and local Punjabi. So Zia-ul-Haq and Nawaz Sharif and all these people are Muhajir Punjabi. But somehow वो छुप जाता था. यहाँ पे शहर आया and यहाँ Urdu was a very impossible for people who are Urdu speakers to learn any language. तो अंग्रेजी मुश्किल से. So it may be that I'm not really sure. I don't know enough about Lahore. I don't know वहाँ का क्या किस तरह से change हुआ. Remember, there are also जो जमींदार वहाँ के थे. They were very connected to the city. यहाँ के इतने कम थे. They were very distant. I don't know. It's not a subject I have understood.
I think it's a 71 government. The 71 government ravaged Karachi as such, and then that you couldn't stop it. It became part 71 में जो भी government आई यहाँ change आया, right? और उससे जो कराची में real estate, construction वगैरह वगैरह, लाहौर इसी वजह से नहीं हुआ. ये लाहौर में इस तरह की government नहीं थी. So the Karachi government
Lahore
just gave.
actually was owned by Lahoris.
Yeah, so it gave way, and then I mean, if you go to Model Town, although the houses are new, but the central circle remains, everything remains. Over here, everything was commercialized, and then there was no looking back after that. And here we are, 60 years later, looking at it as it is.
I think these are no.
No, I would like to finish my.
No, I was just saying that these are things that have become so politically charged that it's very difficult to get an objective view. Because if you're Sindhi, you feel very annoyed. I've heard people saying, Umar Wale Sahab, we had an interview with him. He says, you know, it was very, it's not being prejudiced or anything, but he says it's जैसे एक सैलाब आया और हम डूब गए. You know, like he just felt overwhelmed. So I don't know what the answer to this is, but so much time has gone past, and if anything, लोगों ने अपनी डेढ़ी की हरकतें और मजबूत करने लगे. So I don't know what the answer to this is. I'd like to say it's more cultural activities, cultural exchange, not cultural events. So I'd like to believe that there's just poor communication.
Mike,
On भी कर दो.
जो आप पहले कह रही थी, there was it was an incredible talk, but there was one moment that's really stuck with me. It was a beautiful point where you talk about how you say that, you know, when we think of a city, we might think of a place that's settled, but this was maybe a place that in which people were always moving. There was no settlement. And my question is, isn't that also a way in which, I mean, right now, when we think of a city, when you were talking about the older Karachi, we think of a place where people are always moving from one place to the next. And so I was thinking about, there's this current in what you were saying in which you were skeptical of what the Hodgson, the Saint Hodgson narrative. And I share that skepticism a lot, in that he is a person who says, my father or grandfather is the person who built the fortress that actually became the city. But the way you started the talk, you were talking about all of these shrines and all of these mandirs, which actually are connected to each other by a, you know, subterranean channels, as we now know, and that this is also a place which is shaped by, you know, the Arabian and the Persian and the Indian influence, but that maybe it's not a city in the way we think of a city, but you were describing, you know, I've heard there's 7 monsoon saints, so the Durriya Kazi is just one of them, and then there are all these different mandirs. And so I guess my question is there, you know, in our idea of our nostalgia of what to be nostalgic for, one of the things that I got from the beginning of your talk is that there's so much more to be nostalgic for that exists way, way before the 1970s. And that coming back to this point about Jesus Christ Superstar, I mean, fine, maybe people today wouldn't go to that, but then we have Mangopir, we have all these other places where people do all kinds of things that they don't do in maybe other, you know, that they, you know, that would, to anyone looking at it from a completely different perspective, think of be a place that would be maybe not a city in the way that we think of Bombay or Calcutta or London as a city, but certainly a place where there's contact and there's exchange between, you know, and that there's a movement and there's a mobility that allows for change to occur all the time. So I guess the last point is just like, does this mobility and this movement, I mean, it creates danger. We live in a place in which we have a lot of danger in the world that we're surrounded by. But that is maybe not
Well,
an
I
effect
think
of mobility.
there's some interesting points you've raised there, but I do think that Karachi, from get-go, from the very beginning, was a city of transients. You know, like ये तो अब हो गया है कि लोग यहाँ, I've been here, from my parents were here, but even now, economic migration is a very important factor in the population of Karachi. It was a trader city. It's still a trader city, and it will continue to be a trader city because of its location and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. And as you're saying, if people are coming and going, it's even more of an, like at Karachi University, I felt Karachi University was in a very good position because students in Karachi University are from Gilgit, Hunza, Falana, Dhimaka, everywhere.
It's something we can
They're not one cohesive. So a discussion in the economics class or in the international relations class or something like that might be more
But sorry,
nuanced,
just
you know?
to clarify what I meant by Hodgson, what he says in his original narrative is that the fortress city of Karachi
there was
built by
nothing.
my father. But that doesn't, he even.
And I
doesn't
take
say
what
that
he
it's
says
nothing.
actually with a pinch of salt
But
because he would
there's so much
glorify
else
himself.
that's even outside, that even today we have all these mazars and other places which were sites of.
And that's the other
commercial
thing I
activity
wanted to also bring up is that the deeper, the lower level you go into society, the more continuity and authenticity you find. जितने आप ऊपर जाएंगे, we're always following some trend, some badshah, some whatever, forever. But when you go lower down, and that's been my interest to find indigenous crafts, what is the aesthetic of indigenous, how do they build, how do they live? I try to say कि architects हमारे बनाते हैं buildings, जितनी आप पुरानी buildings को देखें, सबके छत are living spaces. वहां पे कभी चबूतरा भी होता है बैठने को, ठंडी हवा रात में. And our architects make them, if not at an angle, which no one can climb up, their pipes, and yet I know all the boys go and play their bands over there and they meet their friends over there, and हम लोग को भी सीढ़ियों पे चढ़ के जाना पड़ता था. So we're not in touch. The people who are running the city aren't in touch with the needs of the people. The people who are designing the city aren't in touch. So this idea of work, listening, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. I know I'm talking just now, but actually all of this is part of trying to listen before making a decision, about how is it possible for me to know till I know the past, I don't know what I am today. And people, when you actually talk to people, I remember going to the boat building in West Wharf there. And two old geezers were sitting and I started talking about the design of the boats. And he says, ye jo kishti ka ek U shape hai, bow shape. He says, ye samandar pe Bahre Arab mein kahin pe bhi hoga, logon ko pata hai Karachi ki kishti hai. So I try to get engineers and architects, why don't we do an analysis, of this boat, so that if it is something that is so indigenous, and no one is interested, they want to write about Frank Gehry and, some other.
के archives में बहुत लिखा है Dundiyon के बारे में, about how the Karachi Dundis, they were
But
convinced.
they're all anecdotes. You see, till you create academic material, and verifiable academic material, it will not go into the academic dialogue. It'll just be an akhbar or this kind of thing. We have to establish that. Sorry, am I taking very long? I realize it's 5 o'clock. So I think we should maybe end here.
Yeah. Maybe some other those but I guess in a way, Ms. Durriya, there is a certain pride that I said.
Absolutely. To me, Karachi is like heroin addiction. It's not a very good example because being के हमें पता है गटर उबल रहे हैं, हमें पता है ये हो रहा है, चोरियां हो रही हैं, हत्ते हो रहे हैं, फलाना. But there's something very pure about Karachi.
Stockholm syndrome.
I don't know if it's Stockholm syndrome.
So cynic.
I don't think so.
It's so
There's something about this, the energy of this city I miss when I go anywhere else.
I absolutely second you on that.
Yeah.
And let me say one thing more. I have met recently 3 or 4 people who have come from Lahore, and in 2 cases they had never been to Karachi before because they were from Lahore and they only lived in the northern areas of Pakistan, in Lahore and KPK and other places. And then I met 4, but these 2 had never been to Karachi before. And then they came here and they say they just love it so much, they don't want to go back. And the other 2 as well. I mean,
You
one
can't get bored in this city, firstly.
absolutely. And I'll tell you what you were saying. One of them came here on a transfer from Lahore and now was transferred back, and it was time for them to go back. And their entire families live there. And she was so unhappy about the fact that she had to go back. This was about 5 years of living in Karachi. I said, but how can you be so unhappy about going back to where you have come from and where all your family is? And she said, Lahore mein ye hota hai कि या तो आप भाई वहां पर हैं और अगर आप वहां नहीं है तो आप कुत्ता हैं. अब मुझे वहां पे होने में इतनी मेहनत लगती है यहाँ पे मेरा जो दिल चाहता है मैं कर
You know, I'll tell you another interesting thing. A mason, one of our architects, graduates, she said कि this mason or laborer was working for him and said कि मेरी बीवी इतनी बीमार है, पठान था. मेरी बीवी इतनी बीमार है and I'm so worried about her. So she said, why are you working in Karachi? You could work in Pindi or Islamabad and just go for the weekends. He said, नहीं, हम कराची के अलावा कहीं नहीं काम कर सकते. So he said, why? He says, कराची में लोग पूछते हैं तुम क्या कर सकते हो? ये नहीं पूछते कि तुम कहाँ से हो. You know, so there's a different, I don't know where that comes from, but
Karachi is fantastic.
Yeah. Karachi is almost like a mindful person of the whole country. And people come here for the opportunity. It's not saying this is a great country, it's the city that gives opportunities to everybody. But people don't gravitate.
Akeed is disappearing. You were going to say something.
No, I will.
Okay.
Can I say? आप बात पूरी कर ले.
One thing that's so we can officially thank the Durriya for an absolutely incredible. But I know people may need to leave. That's actually the same thing. But if you have another 10, 15 minutes, people can hang around.
Yeah, I have no issue, but I just want to also ask that whoever in this group who is here today, I think we need to अकेले में चीजें नहीं होती, and we are here to strengthen their efforts. They're there to strengthen, and there should be some, instead of feeling defeated by the whole thing, we have to stop feeling defeated.
Yeah. Suraya.
So I think, अगर हम लोग सब अपने interests को side पे करके, and if there's an issue, we should share it with each other and see if किसी के पास कुछ solution है or something. I don't know.
I think
We're
that's
too atomized.
no,
The city is very atomized.
Yeah. So that's a perfect way to end.
No, the perfect way to end is with chai and samosas also, please. You can't talk about Karachi without chai. Okay.
पानी गरम नहीं है, पानी से
And biscuits. Nobody has.
But thank you very much for this very wonderful gathering and very nice opportunity.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
One thing I want to say is, I think this session was